greatest mystery ever to threaten mankind.
Back on the big screen for an intergalactic adventure. The 40th anniversary of the USS Enterprise. In select cinemas, September 15th and 18th only. Featuring the longest trek writing the motion picture. A behind-the-scenes look at the writing process.
Welcome back to the Film School. I'm your host, Joe, and real excited to talk tonight about Star Trek The Motion Picture, the 40th anniversary screening that I went and saw at Fathom Events. I can't believe this film is going to be 40 this December. In my opinion, the most underrated Star Trek film in the entire franchise. People generally just dislike this movie. Very exciting. It picks up, 10 years after the TV series, the original series, 66 to 69. And I think it's supposed to take place 10 years later. Essentially, the Enterprise has gone through a refit. You got the crew returning to go and find or explore the V'ger cloud emanating weird thingy that's coming towards Earth, which we later find out is actually a Voyager probe returning. It's not a spoiler if it's 40 years old, folks. I'm just letting you know right now. But if you haven't seen it, I probably should have warned you we're going to have some spoilers. I'm actually a tremendous fan of this film. It is not the first film to be an adaptation of a TV series utilizing the same cast in the same continuity. Although at the time it was probably the biggest film to do that. With the biggest budget, the biggest promotion. There had been other films that had done that before, like Batman 66 with Adam West and Burt Ward, or Monsters Go Home, so there had been films that had done that, but it was a very rare thing, and this was at the time kind of a huge deal, the cult show that was Star Trek coming to the big screen. Some of the elements have not aged well, particularly the polyester, very late 70s looking costumes. The only time in the cinematic universe where they wear the outfits in this. But personally, I am a big fan of this film. I love this artwork. I've loved it since I was a child. I think it was really cool that Star Trek Beyond utilized similar artwork for their promotions and certain posters. I think it's a fantastic film. To me, it's more akin to what Gene Roddenberry had originally visioned with Star Trek, which is more of a cerebral science fiction series as opposed to the action-adventure space opera type series that it became. It's a lot closer in spirit to The Cage, the original pilot for Star Trek. And in that sense, it's also a lot closer to films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and 2001: A Space Odyssey than it would be, say, Star Wars or, any number of sci-fi action adventure space operas. But it's got beautiful cinematography by Richard H. Klein. Every shot just looks fantastic. Amazing special effects by Douglas Turnbull, who'd worked on 2001 and Close Encounters, as well as John Dykstra, who'd worked on Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and the Buck Rogers TV series of 79. And designs by Sid Mead, who had given us designs for films like Aliens and Blade Runner and Tron. And so for me, visually, this movie is just a stunning film that I think the effects, the practical in-camera modeling effects and projection effects still look impressive to this day. It's got an incredible, rousing, beautifully lush score by Jerry Goldsmith, which introduced the theme song that would become the theme to Star Trek The Next Generation. And of course, Robert Wise's impeccable direction. It is a long movie. It's 2 hours long, but it does feel longer because it's a lot of... there is dialogue, but there are a lot of moments without dialogue, and it's a lot of people looking in monitors and reacting. But for me, it's just that exploring the unknown, which is very exciting for me in science fiction. And I love stories like that. Ad Astra, Interstellar, films like 2001, 2010 that are really about what you don't understand about space, or intelligent life. Solaris is another good example. And I think this fits in there. The only difference is towards the end of the movie, of course, it does give an explanation for what this mysterious cloud that seems to destroy everything in its path really is. But I don't think it negates the experience. I know when I saw it in the theater, there were a few cosplayers dressed as characters from the movie, including a gal that was dressed as late Persis Kambata as Ilea. Just a perfect costume, but she just was kind of negative on the film, and like, nothing really happens. And I feel like, no, there's a lot of things that happen. I kind of walked by her and said, she kept, yeah, nothing really happens, except for the things that do happen. There's actually a lot that happens in this movie, but it's not a film that is that leads you by the hand. It's not a film that has a lot of explanatory dialogue. For the most part, they don't explain everything that's happening to you. There is some of it that you have to kind of figure out for yourself, and there's no action sequences in it. So in that sense, it's very different from any of the other Star Trek movies. But I think it's an underrated film, and I'm so happy that I got to see it on the big screen because it was the first film I ever saw on the big screen. And even though that does date me, I actually did not see it when it originally came out on the big screen because I would have been very young, but it was on a re-release in the early 80s when I was a child. And like 2001: A Space Odyssey, there are moments of this film that actually still frighten me. The big vastness of space and the unknown is a frightening concept to me. Beautiful sound design, too. I just love this movie. It's the film that also introduced the more popular design of the Klingons, with the long hair and the ridged foreheads and the Klingon theme by Jerry Goldsmith, which is absolutely fantastic. In fact, I could watch this film without the dialogue and just listen to the isolated score. This is a soundtrack that I would get on vinyl or CD because it's just a beautiful arrangement of music. And there is a scene early on where Admiral Kirk is come out of retirement to take over the newly refit Enterprise to go charge at this V'ger thing head on because it's the only ship that's within range to try and come into contact with this giant cloud in space. There's a scene where he and Scotty, due to transportation problems, have to take a shuttle to the refit Enterprise that's in dry dock floating above the Earth. And it is just glorious. It is so self-indulgent. It's just a celebration of the Enterprise. And the refit Enterprise has always been my favorite design of the Enterprise. I'm a big fan of the TOS Enterprise, but the refit for the movies, for the Kirk, or the TOS cast movies, always been my favorite. It's just a beautiful design. It's a beautiful ship, and I think it rivals the TARDIS as being my favorite ship in all of science fiction. And then the Discovery, the Millennium Falcon, that kind of, the Bebop, that kind of stuff. But this movie, so underrated, and I'm so happy I got to see it on the big screen. I would see it again in a heartbeat. In fact, I actually watched this movie this and Wrath of Khan probably more than any other of the Star Trek movies. There's just something just awe-inspiring and wondrous about this film. And if you haven't seen it yet, if you're not a big Star Trek fan or you only know the newer the Kelvin timeline movies or the J.J. Abrams films, I recommend getting familiar with the classic Trek movies and starting with this one. And again, if you are expecting it to be an action adventure with phasers and a lot of humor and camaraderie and one-liners and running around and explosions and stuff, you will be disappointed. Think Close Encounters, think 2001, think Interstellar. That's more along the lines of what this film is. I give it 4 stars out of 4, right up there with Wrath of Khan and Star Trek First Contact, because I think those are the 3 best crafted, best written, best acted films in the entire series. And a lot of Trekkies or Trekkers or whatever you want to call yourselves. I'm old school, so I'm a Trekkie, and I don't find it offensive or insulting. I love being a Trekkie. I'm sure that's going to be controversial amongst certain Star Trek fans because a lot of people just do not like this movie. But just on its own merits, just as a science fiction film, not even just a Star Trek film, I think it has a lot to be admired, and I highly recommend seeing it. And sorry, I just had to gush and just talk about what a lovely experience that was. Oh, and the cool thing was too, and I was worried that they might not do this, they had the overture before the movie started. A lot of people don't know this. Star Trek the Motion Picture was one of the last films to have an overture before the film started, which used to be common throughout the 50s and 60s and even the 70s. In fact, I think it was the last major motion picture from a Hollywood studio to have an overture before the film until Dancer in the Dark came out in 2000, the Lars von Trier's film with Bjork, which isn't a Hollywood film. It's an independent film or a foreign film. But this was the last film to have that overture, which is very exciting to sit there in the dark and just hear the beautiful medley of Ilea's theme and by Jerry Goldsmith, who was a film composer that I love, and I wish he was still with us, creating amazing scores. But this is a testament to Gene Roddenberry and the power of Trek, and like it or not, it's because of this that we were able to have sequels and TV series and keep the franchise going. So I'm very grateful for everybody that worked hard on this movie. So thank you very much for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you come back for more episodes and let me know what you think of this movie. I'd be interested to have some conversations about it, not debates or arguments, just ideas. I'd like to know if it's something you like, you hate. If anything I've said has made any kind of difference in an opinion or formulated an opinion on your end, just go ahead and reach out to us and we'll comment back. So we'll see you on the next episode, and wherever you go, there you are. Let's see here.
Just give us a goddamn clip for the end.
Why don't you just shut your mouth?